in the country. The Education Minister, Claudiana Cole, says her ministry will ensure compliance of COVID-19 guidelines in schools, despite public negligence of some preventive measures. And the Gambian leader with his delegates just concluded Umrah as he embarks on a week-long visit in Saudi Arabia. These and more coming on Gambia 24. Stay with us. Good evening, viewers, and many thanks for joining me here on Gambia 24. And we begin with our first story. In an effort to make Gambia a crime-free country, the Gambia Police Force has extended their Operation Zero Crime campaign to the provincial regions. In their weekly joint press conference on Thursday, the Gambia Police Force said they have arrested 104 persons within the Greater Banjul areas. More of that in this report by Binta Jallo.
The Gambia Police Force continue its mandate in making sure there is peace and stability in the country by ensuring Gambia is stable and people's life and properties are protected. The Operation Zero Crime campaign, which was only within the Greater Banjul areas, is now extended to the provincial regions of the country. From the 14th to the 20th of June 2021, a total of 104 individuals were arrested, but after a thorough screening, 23 of those arrested were released immediately because they were not connected to any crime. The police also handed 21 individuals to the Gambia Immigration Department for immigration and immigrant-related issues, and about 24 people were handed over to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency for drug-related matters. Out of the 104 individuals who were arrested, 31 of them were charged for various criminal offenses ranging from sub-breaking and stealing, house-breaking and stealing, possession of stolen properties, obstruction of officers in the execution of their duties, among others. Some cases have already been taken to court, while others are being investigated by the Gambia Police Force. The public relations officer of the Gambia Police Force stated that their officers are usually obstructed during the execution of their duties. Njai therefore advised the public to desist from this act and allow the officers to do their job. Superintendent Lamin Jai also called on the public to channel their complaints, if they have any, to the right authorities and proper actions will be taken. Meanwhile, Jai further highlighted that they are about to launch another operation called Cleaning Main Highways, which seeks to ease traffic congestion.
We are about to launch another operation that we will be clearing the highway of all obstacles and derelict vehicles, and also we know there are some people who have who are tire sellers, and they put tires along the highway at some areas. We know there are people who sell who have put stalls also along the highways and public roads as well. So we want these people to remove these things from the highways and on the sides of the highway, because these things contribute to congestion. And so the Gambia Police Force is coming up with a coordinated operation which is going to target removing all these derelict vehicles and also tires, as well as workshops and so on and so forth, that are being put on the highways and creating obstruction on public roads and highways.
The Deputy Public Relations Officer of the Gambia Fire and Rescue Service, Cadet Amadou F.M. Jai, highlighted on some of the challenges they also encounter in their line of duty.
People fond of stoning our officers, our fire appliances, while we are called onto a fire scene. Those are chargeable offenses that can be levied to any person found wanting.
Cadet Jai stated that such behavior will have a great impact on the fire victims. He called on the general public to allow the officers to do their job accordingly and allow them to assist during hard times. Assistant Piero Cadet Njai warned those found burning people's houses for no reason to desist from such acts. He further advised landlords to be vigilant of the people they rent their houses to in order to avoid what they call arson. NCA3 Lamin Kejobate, DDR officer of the Gambia National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, also urged the public to be law-abiding and continue giving information about drug peddlers.
So continue supplying Drug Law Enforcement Agency with information or sister security services with information. And please, like Piero Njai has just mentioned as well also, obstruction is one of the greatest challenges that we are faced with daily during our routine operations in and out during our routine operations. So we just want to continue to appeal to the general public that obstructing our officers while executing their functions is a breach of the law. And anybody who is found wanting, you will face the full force of the law.
Since 2017, a lot of attacks on innocent people have surfaced in the country. As a result, the Operation Zero Crime campaign was launched with the objective of tackling crimes and dismantling criminal hideouts. Since then, significant arrests have been made by the Gambia Police Force and other sister security forces. For iAfrica News, Binte Jallo.
An Operation Zero Crime will swing wings to provincial regions for effective outcome in coping criminal-related activities in the country. Now, President Barrow has on Thursday performed Umrah at the holy city of Mecca. Umrah, also known as Lesser Islamic Pilgrimage, is performed in the holy city of Mecca at any time of the year, and contrasts to pilgrimage, which has specific dates according to the Islamic lunar calendar. The president is on a week-long visit in Saudi Arabia, which began on Wednesday, 23rd June and will end on Tuesday, 29th of June this year. Omar Ahmad Toure files in this report.
President Barrow has fulfilled one of the recommended sunnah in Islam, Umrah, a lesser pilgrimage today Thursday. He has taken his ihram and performed tawaf, a circle around the Kaaba, and Sa'i, a walk to commemorate Prophet Ibrahim's wife Hajar's search for water for her son Ismail and God's mercy in answering prayers. As part of his 7-day visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, President Barrow arrived in Medina yesterday, where he visited the Prophet's Mosque before signing a memorandum of understanding with the First Lady's Foundation at the Al Madina Museum. The Gambian leader is expected to perform Juma prayer in Makkah on Friday. He is also expected to have an audience with the President of the Islamic Bank, IDB, and Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Conference, OIC, respectively. President Barrow is also set to meet the CEO of Saudi Fund for Development, SFD, while on Monday, 28 June, he will inaugurate the Gambian Embassy and an ambassador's residence in Riyadh before departing for Banjul on Tuesday, June 29. Umrah is sometimes considered the lesser pilgrimage, but is still highly recommended in Islam, despite not being compulsory on Muslims. It requires Muslims to perform 2 key rituals, Tawaf and Sa'i. Tawaf is a circle around the Kaaba. This is followed by Sa'i, a walk between Safa and Marwa, to commemorate Hajar's search for water for her son, Prophet Ismail. Reporting for iAfrica TV, this is Omar Ahmad Toure.
From that, despite the lack of regard for COVID-19 guidelines in schools across the country, the Minister of Basic and Secondary Education told lawmakers in Banjul that her ministry is taking steps in making sure that the COVID-19 guidelines are adhered to in schools. Madam Claudiana Cole was responding to lawmakers during the question and answer sessions on the impact of COVID-19 on the education system and the steps that the ministry has or intends to take to ensure that students are protected from the virus. This is the Hasmo.
The advent of COVID-19 pandemic has affected educational systems worldwide, leading to near total closure of schools. Most governments, including the Gambia, decided to temporarily close educational institutions in an attempt to curb the further spread of the virus. But despite the government's attempt to reduce infections in the country, Most schools in the Gambia are no longer adhering to the WHO COVID-19 guidelines on the preventive measures. Appearing before parliamentarians on Wednesday, the Minister of Basic and Secondary Education, Claudiana Cole, said her ministry is doing everything possible in making sure that COVID-19 guidelines and social distancing are adhered to in schools.
Honorable Speaker, I can tell you that we are regularly monitoring the COVID restrictions in our schools. And we continue to provide the necessary PPEs that the schools need to ensure that the children are safe. We monitor from the regional level, the cluster level perhaps. We start from the cluster level. We monitor from the regional level, and we monitor from the national level as well. We are regularly monitoring to ensure that the COVID guidelines are respected and the PPEs are available in our schools.
In the midst of lockdowns, Minister Cole added that her ministry was able to come up with models that schools will operate on to ensure continuity of learning.
The ministry has developed models for reopening of schools to ensure continuity of learning in the midst of COVID-19. The models are tailored to suit the needs of the schools with a target of 200 days on the school calendar. However, it is important to note that the models are not a one-size-fits-all. Hence, based on simulations, only 23 schools were expected to alternate.
Responding to the question on the new school timetable, the minister said they face challenges in adhering to school distancing due to the large population size in schools. This, she said, prompted them to stretch the school days from Mondays to Saturdays to enable students to have equal contact hours.
For the simulation was that we have, for all categories of schools, from lower to upper basic to senior secondary schools, we have schools that have small enrollments and schools that have large enrollments, irrespective of their categories. Some of our lower basic schools are quite large, with populations of over 3,000. And some of our senior schools and upper basics are equally large with that type of population. And considering the social distancing that we needed to employ in our classrooms, where classrooms used to accommodate up to about 45, which is the teacher-pupil ratio, according to the education policy.
The impact of COVID-19 on education worldwide has been devastating. UNESCO has reported that over 1.5 billion students had been affected due to the closure of schools in 165 countries, which is more than 85% of all registered students. And also over 63 million teachers and large number of education support personnel have been affected by the pandemic. Given these unprecedented developments, the COVID-19 has become an education crisis. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Daisy.
And from that report by Daisy, we'll go with a short commercial break and return with more news. Don't go away.
The pride we take in our brand, the work we put into constantly change the landscape and elevate real estate in the Gambia, it's compared to none. From inception, our goal was to add value to the beautiful Gambian landscape. That's why we are proud innovators of community estates. Kololi Sands is an exceptional piece of work, tailored for ultimate convenience and luxury, to bring you an element of finesse that is rare but unique in its own. This is also our pride and joy, and we welcome you to the exquisite beauty right here in Kololi and right here on the waterfront. Kololi Sands, feel the ocean breeze at your doorstep.
Our sun is running out. Our smiling coast is losing its beauty. Our women are losing their gardens, and our children are losing their future. Our communities infested with mosquitoes and crocodiles attacking and killing our children. Communities are in a state of devastation in exchange for new cities, new buildings, and new roads. Sand mining is not an alternative for the Gambia. Sand dredging is the solution. SMJ is a Gambian-owned company located at Denton Bridge. At SMJ, you dredge fine sand from sea without destruction. Sand dredged from sea is the best solution to keep developing our infrastructure to last a lifetime. SMJ is for a better future. Stop by Denton Bridge. Call us today on +220 277 7753.
Welcome back. Now to the rest of our stories. The World Bank Regional Director has reaffirmed commitment to supporting the Gambia in its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Nathan Bilid was speaking during his visit to the renovated Namban Clinic, serving as a COVID-19 treatment center in Bakau. Desise tells us more in this report.
During the peak of the coronavirus pandemic, the Ministry of Health initiated the renovation of the one-time abandoned Demban Clinic with joint support from South Africa Global Foundation, the World Bank and UNDP. The facility in Bakau was added to the list of treatment centers for COVID-19 patients. Following the inauguration of the clinic last year, the World Bank Regional Director on Wednesday paid a visit to the facility to obtain first-hand information on the progress so far. Speaking to the press by the end of his tour, Nathan Bilid expressed World Bank's renewed commitment in the fight against COVID-19.
We continue to encourage the ministry to be very prudent, efficient, and effective in the utilization governance of these funds to ensure that the services that are supposed to be rendered to all the citizens and beneficiaries of medical services in the country can be well supported through the provision of these resources. We remain fully committed to supporting the Gambia in the development and improvement of the health sector.
Mr. Bilid unveiled plans by the World Bank to ensure fair distribution of COVID-19 vaccines in the Africa continent.
From the perspective of the World Bank, and I know from many of our other partners, we are working very, very diligently to assist in the acquisition of vaccines. There is a very strong initiative effort being held, supported through the African Union for the acquisition of vaccines for the African continent. From our specific perspective, the World Bank, our first and primary goal was to ensure that there was availability of financing. So our leadership very soon into the COVID-19 pandemic had allocated a very large amount of money to ensure that any country that needed financing for the purchase of vaccines would be able to get it.
The health facility in Bakau was reviewed at a tune of $290,000 at a time when the Gambia needed to prepare for a worst-case scenario from COVID-19. The Ministry of Health and the South Africa Global Foundation, together with the UN Development Programme and the World Bank, inaugurated the Demban Clinic in December 2020. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Desise.
As part of his nationwide tour, the Chief of Defense Staff on the Gambia Armed Forces visited the infantry battalion based in Farafene, where the construction of standard accommodation for soldiers is ongoing. And the project, at the tune of over $20 million, is among plans by the Gambia Armed Force to offer more standard military bases in different parts of the country. Mariama Cham tells us more.
In his second day of visit to military deployments across the country, the Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Yakuba Drame, met with stakeholders and sister security services in the Farafanya town of North Bank region on Tuesday. The delegate checked into the 2nd Infantry Battalion, where an accommodation structure with over 50 rooms is being constructed for members of the military. Good and proper accommodation for men and women in uniform has always been a challenge in the armed forces. Major Lamin Sanyang, spokesperson of the Gambia Armed Forces, described the new development as a drive to provide conducive accommodation for the men in uniform.
By this year, when the budget was done and an amount was allocated for development, we decided to concentrate or prioritize most of our development projects in terms of when it relates to accommodation. So in the past, what we used to do was like spread our net with the little resources that we had. And it was observed that none of the projects were completed because we were spread thin. And as a result, the Chief of Defense Staff has directed that all prioritization of the accommodation should be done. And therefore, that's why we have this accommodation being constructed here in Farafenya.
At the Ked Ayub Poste border between Senegal and the Gambia, the CDS and delegation met security forces of both countries behind a closed door. It could be anticipated that two sides pondered on challenges on management of cross-border security matters. Back to the 2nd Infantry Battalion, the discussion with troops was centered chiefly on their living conditions, disciplinary issues, and the way forward for the armed forces. Reporting for iAfrica News from CRR, I am Mariama Cham.
That was all we have for you on Gambia 24. Thanks for the pleasure of your company, and do stay connected with us for more of our interesting programs. Have a good evening.